Good morning and welcome to this week's Jump discussion. And this week we are talking about, something I think that's often talked about from a recruitment point of view, but is seldom sort of talked about or seldom has deep enough strategies to enable people to really run. So we're going to talk about, is your business obsolete, and how to cope with departing clients. And I've had this conversation with quite a lot of clients in the past about whether their business is obsolete and what's going on. And this is the question that I keep sort of coming back to. The question about being obsolete is very intriguing. And lots of recruiters claim that it's a hard market, but they're well known in the market. So I started to ask questions, and this is a question I've started to ask every recruiter. And this question is very, very simple. The question is, in your market this week, how many people have been placed either in your niche or in your geographical area into a new job this week? And it's a very, very simple question. How many candidates have been placed into your marketplace? And normally you start to get the consultants or the owner of the business start to think about that. And it leads to the next question. How many did you place? So whatever figure you think about, if you conservatively times that by triple it or quadruple it or even more, you start to understand that there's then follow-on questions that come. Because if you haven't placed the candidate, who has? So even in a hard market, candidates are getting placed. And there's a reason why you're not placing them, because you're obscure to your marketplace, or your services to your current clients have become obsolete. They don't exist. Your clients don't require you anymore, or they've moved over to clients. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And today, I'm joined by two editions of the Jump team. Okay, we have Debbie Vernon, who's been on a couple of webinars, and our latest entrance into the Jump team is Kate Parker, who has joined us. She was going to join us in 10 minutes, but she's actually joined us now, which is really great.
I'm here.
Well done.
Okay.
Hello, hi.
So let's give a quick introduction. So Debbie, she's got 25-year experience in leadership development at the C-suite level, right through to management level, bespoke training, mentoring, coaching, facilitation. Her current main focus for Jump is in the executive coaching space, and she's working with clients like Microsoft down to solo businesses. She's also a culture expert, supporting organizations with their design and development and their desire to become agile and a progressive culture. So she's going to give us a really good view from the opposite side of recruitment, because she's not in recruitment. So it's always good to get a balanced argument and a balanced conversation. And we have Kate Parker, who has 3 decades of experience in the recruitment industry with 15 years in commercial, strategic and operational leadership roles in the search space, working for companies like Harvey Nash, Berwick Talent, which is part of the Odgers Group, and Corn Ferry, where she was responsible for driving innovation and operational excellence with executives and professional search businesses across the EMEA market. She's now started her own little consultancy business 5 months ago, and she's helping recruitment agencies and search agencies grow their search capabilities. So Kate and Debbie, welcome to this week. Also joined by Heather, who I believe is somewhere on the Tour de France route.
I am indeed.
Waiting for her husband to come back, who went out on the tour about 3 weeks ago, but still hasn't finished the first stage, but he's still out there cycling. So we're going to jump into our first question. And the first question is always an interesting question. Okay, so the question is this: what are the most common reasons clients leave recruitment agencies, and how can Aegis proactively address these issues?
This is a great question, Howard, as an opener, because it made me smile wryly as I read it, because one of the reasons I think that clients leave recruitment agencies is because they don't know that they've got a relationship with them. So there are so many people working in recruitment who think they've got this really strong relationship with their client, when in fact it's a transactional relationship, and somebody else comes along and offers them something new and shiny or cheaper or different, and off the client trots. And it didn't occur to the client that they were leaving anyone, because they don't really believe they have a relationship with the client in the first place. So for me, it's that one of the first things to think about is, do you really have a relationship with your client? Because I think sometimes you don't, when you think you do. Kate,
yeah,
I can see you nodding.
Yeah, it's a great point. And we've had that sort of, previously within Odgers, within Corn Ferry, where you have a consultant who is the dedicated account manager for a client. The client don't know that that person is their dedicated account manager. you know, there hasn't been that level of engagement to provide that validation, and the client doesn't feel like they're being account managed or looked after. So it can come as a bit of a surprise from the consultant side when they do walk away and use another agency. I mean, I think that the biggest killer of any relationship is poor or ineffective communication. You know, if you're not able to keep your clients updated, you know, clients hate being kept in the dark. They hate not being updated. They hate sort of wondering what's going on in the background. So, you know, in terms of how you can address those issues, commit to that response time frame with your clients, with your teams. Always respond to client emails, even if there isn't an update. You know, respond to the email to say, I've acknowledged your email, we haven't got an update. But have that sort of structure around and cadence around regular check-ins, timely updates. That's a really good guiding principle to have in terms of, you know, having that communication. Because without communication, you don't have it. You don't have that.
You don't have a relationship.
A relationship, right?
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting, Kate, when you said that, because it's not just communicating when you've got something to sell to your client, or when they're buying from, you know, making sure that your communication is constant and relevant and interesting and purposeful,
and give something back. So you're not constantly going to your client asking. But you're also going to them giving, and whether that is market insights, you know, some salary survey insights, or, you know, invitation to an event. Don't always be going to your clients asking them for something. Go to them giving something, adding that value.
But I think it's that honest reality check that they need to have, that clients are getting courted daily by lots and lots of other agencies. So if they don't recognize that and they don't have a strategy in place, then they'll lose clients. They'll even lose some of their best clients, because, you know, if someone's going out and selling a better service and being more attentive to that client, then they'll start to move on to that client. So the reasons client leaves is because, as we said there, agencies are offering a better service, they're communicating more clearly with the client. And what happens is most recruitment agencies sell their service once to a client and then stop selling that service the client, and therefore any service gets reduced and reduced and reduced. And therefore what we have is that your services become old and obsolete, and the client is then listening to new service suppliers, new recruitment agencies, and that service looks wonderful, and therefore they move on. So I had this conversation yesterday with one of my clients, and they've been sort of fighting visiting their clients, absolutely fighting visiting their clients. So the last course, they've gone out and made a point of visiting all their clients, and they reckon that they have lost hundreds and thousands of pounds in opportunities because their client didn't think that they could supply that service. And they've suddenly found that they've got weaknesses in their strategy, weakness in their services, etc. And guess what? They're starting to address that. And over the last 3 weeks since they've started to address that, they've suddenly tripled the amount of requirements that they haven't had on.
And you know, and frankly, if you've only got one person in your business communicating with that individual client, and they're only doing it about what, you know, the thing that they do, why would a client know? You know, a client's just not gonna know about the unless you're telling them. You know, there's no crystal balls out there about this kind of stuff. So,
but I suppose it's the when you look at a recruiter and they're talking to a client, they're a little bit scared of a client because they put the client on a pedestal, and therefore they've sold their services once, they've got their signed little T's and C's across, and they think, I can't now go back and resell more services or better service or upgrade my services, because what if the client wants to negotiate down? Well, they only want to negotiate down if you haven't been supplying a good service in the first place. So it is about recognizing those things. So let's move on.
Sorry, before you move on, I've also seen something slightly less positive a reason as well, which is recruiters not willing to share their relationship with a client with other people in the business. It's like, I want, this is my client, I'm going to supply them, rather than understanding if they open that client up to other people in the organization to supply other services, that strengthens the relationship. It doesn't risk it or damage it. You know, it's a positive thing to share. And I think sometimes we have a responsibility as leaders to really encourage that behavior.
So So go on, Kate.
Sorry, one last point. I think if you think about the amount of time, energy, investment that you put into acquiring a customer, all of that effort, and winning that customer, that is no way replicated in so many instances once you've won the customer. The big effort, the big push comes in winning, and then not in really servicing, or like you say, opening out that account to peers, looking at really understanding the client, their business context,
and
what are their
else
pain points, what else you can do. You may have sort of got a relationship based, like you say, on something within one function, but you're not thinking outside of that to the other portfolio of services that you might be able to offer.
So let's push on to the next question, because I think we're going to cover quite a lot of this in some of the next questions. And you'll notice that Debbie's dropped off. Apparently, she's not paid electricity bill and they've cut her off. No, she's had some sort of shortage and somewhere, so she'll be getting back with us soon. So next question then, and I think when we're talking about these, can you share successful strategies or case studies where recruitment agencies have managed to turn around a potential lost client relationship? And I think for UK that'd be quite an interesting conversation.
Yeah. So when I was at Harvey Nash, I initially was recruited to look after the BP account, and then I went on mat leave and I came back into a slightly different role, which was leading the client engagement program. And the starting point for that initiative was a pilot of 20 key clients for the business. So first of all, I undertook meetings with all of the consultants who serviced those clients to understand how they felt the partnership was going, looking at the key metrics, relationship scoring, looking how we could move ourselves up the value chain. And then I met with the corresponding client stakeholders to get their perspective. So in most cases, the two weren't that far apart. But in one case, the consultant thought that they were doing an absolutely amazing job, but the client was really unhappy. And we were really losing market share to our competitors within that client. That was down in the most part to the engagement style, so that the consultant who was leading the account was bypassing the newly appointed head of talent. They were dealing directly with line, even after they'd been told a few times not to do so. So we had to take some quite sort of radical steps to get that relationship back on track, including in this instance actually swapping out that client's key point of contact and putting in a really clear engagement strategy and comms process. As I was leading that program, I sort of was really visible, went to the client site at least once a month to meet with the head of talent and the senior line management stakeholders, put in a sort of an account team that were responsible for different areas of the business, whereas the previous consultant had just been selling his area of tech recruitment into one area of the sort of the business. And over 12 to 18 months, we managed not just to rectify things, but actually to improve things to such a point that we sold and delivered an exclusive retained campaign to that client. And I think, the moral of that story is that you shouldn't necessarily accept the narrative of individual consultants saying that things are going well. Some level of independent checks and balances can be really valuable, and whether that's by way of having a dedicated person looking at client engagement across the business, or by ensuring that the client has more than one touch point within your organization, meeting with senior members of the leadership team on quarterly or half yearly or annual reviews, having that sort of breadth of relationship around those clients is really important.
So I think I'm going to give you two examples that link into one, and part of it's about your comment there, both Heather and Kate, about sharing with other consultants, sharing across the business and what happens. So I was looking after a small team in Nottingham because their manager had left. Wasn't part of my team, but they were managing a large key account. And I went in and asked them, okay, what did you bill last year? And they'd billed £4 million the year before out of that client. And they were quite ecstatic by that, until I asked the simple question: what did the client bill in total in IT recruitment? You've got four major suppliers, including ourselves, with this client. What's happening? 2 weeks later, I'm back in the office, and the guy sort of scuttling around, sort of avoiding any sort of contact whatsoever. So broached the subject with him, and he's still, look, I'm really embarrassed now to tell you this. They billed £25 million last year, of which one of the major clients suppliers had done 16.
Yeah.
6 months later, we lost that client because we weren't speaking to the key people within that client. So I made a point of looking at all our clients and what we were doing with our clients, and went out to see one client where we had a very large revenue stream. We had about a 20 grand a week revenue stream coming from this client. And my consultant was blind and saying, no, there's nothing else in this client. I've got it absolutely nailed down. And one of the other girls in the team came and said, well, I think I've got an in into that client. So I said, right, okay, to cure the argument, let's not have an argument. Let's go down and see the client, the pair of us, and have a meeting with the client and see what's going on. Quite literally walk down one corridor. One consultant turned left into the room where he had 20 grand coming a week out of it. The other consultant went right 2 doors down into a room. And within 18 months, we had 25 grand a week coming out of the other side of the business that we didn't even know existed. We then sent the whole business to the Adecco group, who then opened that business up and sold £100 million a year deal out of that recruitment agency. So we suddenly recognized that what you were talking about there, Kate, it's about the communication with the client and understanding that there are more areas in every single client. And I always look at this, that you look at it as your relationship goes from stranger to prospect to customer to promoter. And for every customer you've probably got about 5 to 10 strangers that you're not dealing with that'll be more powerful. And if you're not dealing with those people, then that is the problem. So that's the sort of areas that I've got. So Debbie's back. She's now paid she's paid electricity bill. They put her back on. She's put 50p in the meter. From there, we were talking about, could you share strategies or case studies where recruitment agencies have managed to turn around the potential loss of a client? And I think what we're talking about, Kate, turning around the potential loss is all about understanding the client, understanding how your services match their needs, and then developing more services to match their needs. But it first starts with that high-end communication with the people that leverage the actual signing off of all the accounts.
Yeah, and a regular review, a regular cadence of review. Because like I say, with this particular instance at Harvey Nash, it was, one person's story around how the relationship was, and actually that was not what was actually happening.
Yeah.
So,
and Kate, I've seen that so many times. I think it's really a typical situation, because a consultant, they are generally optimistic creatures, and they want to believe that they have the relationship that's available, right? They've nailed it, they've got it, they're happy with it, it's good. And so these opportunities come when they allow somebody else to come in, or you make a point of coming in, instead of just understanding the relationship from listening to your consultants. As a business owner, you go to and you start to deepen and broaden that relationship with the client, and really get under the skin of what's going on in the client, rather than just what your consultant is telling you. And they genuinely believe it, because that is their experience of the client, and inevitably the person that they're dealing with is keeping them in their box. They don't want them in the rest of the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's push that question then, and I'm sure Debbie will come in on this side, is how can a recruitment agency or any business effectively measure client satisfaction and identify warning signs of potential client departure?
Yeah, thank you, and apologies for the power cut there unexpectedly and very suddenly. I think in terms of warning signs, if I take that first of all, I think when you've got an established relationship, you'll be able to kind of sense the changes in in dynamic. So I think there's an element really for me around how responsive are your clients and your client contacts, how engaged are they in the conversation, and how transactional are the conversations becoming. Are the conversations just business led, or are they those kind of deeper, more strategic conversations that maybe you've been having for some time? And even, is there a power struggle that's beginning to emerge? Do you get a sense that a client that's worked in harmony with you is beginning to push back a little bit? Some of those kind of relationship dynamics can start to change in that sort of situation. So there are some warning signs that we can look out for. But I think really for me, it's, what do we want to measure, and what do we really need to measure, and how can we ensure that our clients feel valued in that process? Because when you're the client and you're being asked to give feedback, or you're being asked to give insights, or you're aware that there are various measures in place, do you actually see anything change as a result of the time and effort you put in to providing that feedback, to giving those insights? And I think it's really about helping your client recognize that they are nurturing your organization, they're helping your organization grow and develop and be more effective. So you need to be describing to them what's going to change, what's going to look different, what's going to improve. And you need to make sure that your client feels as though they're on that journey with you in a dynamic way, as opposed to it feeling very transactional or a very static conversation that they never really hear anything about again. So for me, it is really asking the questions of what is it we want to measure and why, and how do we make sure the client feels utterly and completely valued all the way through that process.
Just picking up on that, Debbie, I think there's absolutely nothing worse than asking for feedback if then there's nothing acted upon from that feedback. So, you know, having these sort of client satisfaction initiatives and NPS surveys and this, that, and the other, that's great. But use the feedback. You know, I know at Corn Ferry, and it's an organization that you think perhaps on the face of it would be absolutely all over this stuff. We weren't. But you know, the feedback loop just didn't exist. So the surveys went out, the clients gave their feedback, the feedback got put onto the partners' performance thing, and no one ever looked at the feedback again. So absolutely right. Clients need to feel that you're investing the time in looking at those continuous improvement matters as a result of their feedback.
I think that's a great.
The other thing I think it's important to do is have some regular discourse in your organisation about your relationship with that client across a wider spectrum of people than you would normally have. So that you're not getting into that situation where you've got one consultant who's defining how you view that client. So actively mapping those individual clients, actively going in and saying, okay, how many relationships have we got? With whom? Who are the decision makers we don't have relationships with? What are the other pockets of opportunity? And actually, in a really structured way, mapping your relationship and the client opportunity and the satisfaction and the relationships and the business levels, but much, much more deeply than you would traditionally.
I think that also means extending down to, you know, even the relationship between finance and credit control.
Yeah, you know, 100%. They are just as important.
Yeah, because it's, you know, ultimately those people are presenting that front of as the business servicing that client. So the relationship needs to go up and down. And
finance and credit control can be a really useful source of information about how much business is being done with other recruitment businesses.
So I think this goes back to the old sort of account management style where you should be bridging every type of the business, and therefore you're using Porter's 5 forces to measure where the problems are. So who's the entrance into the market, who's the threat into the market, who's the internal threat, etc. And using all of those things. And I think once you start to look to measure, it goes back to the individual client, that you can't just have a sweeping measurement for every single client, because every single client is different and every client has different needs. And therefore what you both Heather and Kate was talking about and Debbie was alluding to was about having that individual approach to clients and what does good look like. And I always think, you know, what good looks like to me might mean that somebody else is rubbish or someone else is absolute brilliance. And that's the bit that we measure it on our own performance. Oh, we should be sending 3 CVs to get 2 interviews to get 1 placement, etc., etc., etc. I've got clients who have got an 88% fill rate by sending 1 CV, and that's all they do. They send 1 CV and they've got an 88% fill rate off that 1 CV. So every client and every agency has a different measure, and I think it's about understanding what good look like from your point of view, matching that to what good looks like from the client's point of view, and then covering all your bases within that client to ensure that you've got a measured satisfaction, because your recruitment might be saying you're brilliant, but the procurement line might be saying we're spending too much. with this one agency.
Yeah.
And if you don't know that, then that's the threat that's going to come, because procurement are the ones that are going to come and threaten you. It might be that the CEO, as it was with our big client, was being courted by somebody else, and all of a sudden they come in and bring an RPO, and that you're all out. So all of a sudden it's going up the line, across the line, and across all the divisions to make sure that you've got an absolute full understanding of the client and what satisfaction means for that client. So the warning signs, as you've said, lack of communication, drop in roles. How many times do I hear 8 consultants go, oh, look at this job here, it's pretty similar to that job there that my client usually has, and it turns out to be their client because they haven't kept that communication high. So here's another sort of question to sort of pull it round a little bit. In your experience, what are the key elements that distinguish a high client-centric recruitment agency from one that is at the risk of becoming obsolete or obscure?
Yeah, I mean, I think if memory serves me right, it was Jeff Bezos from Amazon years ago was the first person to introduce this concept of giving your client a chair in the room. And if it wasn't him, I know he was, at least second or third to do that. But I think ultimately, it's really giving your client a voice. And people talk about putting clients at the heart of everything they do, but when you really ask them what they mean by that and how that translates practically, actually they're not doing that. And so when you're really giving your client a voice, you're having meetings about your strategy, your approach, your mission statement, your KPIs, when you review your performance, when you review your business results, whatever it might be. Put your client in that room. What would they say? How can you really anticipate what they would make of the decisions that you're making? They've got to be absolutely front and center. And I think organizations that do that really well and don't pay lip service to it just always have the edge. They are always successful. Their clients respond to them. They seem to just align with their clients so much better because they've got intimate relationships with them. And so they can really represent them in all of their internal meetings. And I think if you're giving your client a voice and you're really being able to draw out what they would make of the decisions you make internal decisions from the outside in, which might sound a little bit peculiar, but it's critical to do that if you're going to set yourself apart as a truly client-centric organization. So factor in your client's voice. What are their goals? What's their strategy? What are their aims? What are their highs, their lows? What kind of industry are they in? What are their struggles? And what are they trying to achieve? And how can you act in support of helping them achieve those things? So, whether we like that idea or not, putting a chair in the room in your meetings where your customer is having a voice can be really critical, and it can set you apart in that client-centric modality.
I've seen that done really well. I had completely forgotten about it until you mentioned it, Debbie. But they actually retained people in the business as an advisory board who were high-end clients and high-end candidates, and they paid them to come and be an advisory board to the business. And it was so powerful to have that input from those individuals. It was phenomenal. I'd completely forgotten about that. So.
I think the other lens that we should look at this through is candidate experience, because ultimately you are representing your client in the market, and therefore the candidate's experience of you as an agency is reflective of the client's approach, I guess. So poor candidate treatment or poor candidate experience can become really obvious really quickly to your clients and be really very damaging. We all know that candidates who kind of go through the interview process, start building relationships directly with the clients, will be really frank about their experience with the agency they're working with. And some clients, ask the direct question, how have you found working with the agency hiring for this role? So, to be truly client-centric, you need to be absolutely candidate-centric as well, and really prioritize candidate experience. You need to do that anyway, but that's another reason to do so, because it's absolutely reflective of how you operate in the market, and it will be very transparent to your clients.
What's really interesting is listening to the three of you and listening to what we've been saying for quite some time. Debbie, you put it very succinctly about putting the client's chair in the room. We've been talking constantly about when clients are planning their recruitment processes, how often are you in the room? And that is usually never. Okay. And therefore, when we're planning our processes and how we deal with the client, how often is the client in the room? Usually never. And therefore, what that says is our relationship isn't strong enough with a client because they don't see us as an integral part of their business to invite us in to have that conversation when they're doing their planning for the next 12 months. But we don't look at our clients and say, actually, you're an integral part of how we should develop our services, and look at that. So we start to think about, we should be meeting more clients. And what I think about as a client-centric business is one that has the client sat at the heart of everything that they do. And that includes the candidate fall that goes into that client. And so they meet their clients not regularly, they meet their clients an awful lot. They are in their clients, they're embedded in their clients. But what we talked about, it's the clients, the recruitment agencies that aid the what we call employee value proposition into the candidate marketplace. And that's what you were talking about there, Kate, is that if I can place my client's brand into the candidate marketplace and create a better brand awareness of that, then attraction and retention becomes so much easier.
Yeah.
And that's the bit that we've got to start. Again, I was talking to a client on Monday who's bidding for 180 roles over the next 12 months. And I said, look at their Glassdoor, look at what's happening. And they looked at their Glassdoor, and the Glassdoor was an awful view of the client. So I said, you've got to go in there and then sell EVP and sell how you can develop a better EVP, how you can do that. That's a client-centric recruitment. You're not talking about just putting a bum on a seat and hoping that they pass, their 3 months probation period, etc., and so you can get paid. It's talking about how you elevate the client's value proposition into the marketplace and develop from there. So here's another question then. How should recruitment agencies adapt their business outreach in order not to be reviewed as obsolete or obscure by a potential client base?
What you just described there, Howard, is exactly the answer to this question. So it's making sure that your outreach is relevant and it isn't just about bums on seats. It's truly being a specialist advisor for them, solving their problems, not just selling them recruitment. And I had an example with one of my clients who had been asked, they wanted some help with putting together some information on a PSL application they were putting together. And one of the questions was, can you commit to giving us a diverse shortlist? And it's kind of like, well, really? You want a yes, no answer to, can you commit to giving us a diverse, and so what I've written for them is something completely different, going back and saying, actually, what are you doing about diversity? What is it like for somebody when they come to work for you? What are you doing about inclusion? What's your culture? What's the training that your managers are getting? And so the whole PSL debate it's not about somebody just saying, oh, will you give us diverse shortlist? It's so much bigger than that. And that's then a massive opportunity to talk about proper consultancy. Right? As a specialist in the marketplace. It's not about us giving you a diverse workforce. It's about all of the things in your business that impact on inclusion. So it's turning it around from just answering your clients' questions, giving them what they think they want, to actually truly acting as a subject matter specialist in talent.
Yeah. And I think, all the usual stuff in terms of, making sure that you're not a one-dimensional transactional supplier, but that you're a partner who can, provide interesting white papers, invite to webinars, sit alongside at conferences, go to industry events, all of that kind of stuff. That needs to be at the forefront of your client engagement strategy, is all of that stuff around that transactional relationship.
Yeah, no, I think so. And also for me, I think it really is about personalization. The more people I talk to, the more I realize that people just want to be spoken to and almost feel as though there is a one-on-one message coming across at every opportunity. And, and I think we've all worked out that with multi-generational workforces and, our clients will have such a mix of individuals that we're working with that, you can't do the one size fits all anymore. It's got to be tailored, it's got to be personalized, it's got to be individualized. And the message has really got to land so that those individuals can truly hear how you can solve their problems for them, to Heather's point, how you can reduce the white noise of any working day, and how you can do that without giving them new issues, and how you can make it enjoyable to work with you and easy to navigate. And you don't remove one blocker that they've got themselves by giving them another one that comes with your bureaucratic way of working as an organization to your clients. So you've got to really message at an individual level, I think, in today's kind of working world, because people want to feel as though the message is for them, so that they can visualize how it impacts and how it can make a difference, and get them eager to buy from you, in inverted commas, as a result of that.
So to drive the buying desire, recruitment, and I think, is a very strange way, and I'm trying to sort of reverse this. We're very good at trying to say what's wrong with your business, what you're failing, build the pain. Where actually, if you start to look at what you said there, Debbie, about the impact, I'm trying to find out what looks good, what will make you look good, what will help you succeed, what will help you hit your targets. That puts the client in a different mindset. We then go back to what we talked about earlier about stranger, prospect, customer, promoter. There are 4 different types of people sat in your business. So shouldn't we have 4 different types of marketing strategy going to those people?
Is
4
that
different types,
personalization again,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, 4 different types of conversations to have with those people. So your service level, your white papers, your data, your thought leader type things are going out to those type of people. But if I can take the buyer, and remember, we don't have a relationship with the company, we have a relationship with the people in the company. So if I've only got a relationship with a buyer and they're not even promoting me, then how do I get around the rest of the business? So I've got to start to change the way I market myself into that business and across all areas of the business. And I think once you start to do that, then you stop being obsolete. And that means that every time a client brings me a role, I should be able to say to a client, actually, Mr. Client, I've got enough candidates to do that on a contingency basis. Actually, Mr. Client, that role there needs to be retained because you're not going to find that. And be absolutely open and honest about that, because you can then save the client money saying, right, look, that should be retained, but I've got 2 clients on the go at the moment, which I think might fit that. I'll do that at a contingency service and put those clients in. But if those candidates aren't right, then it will be a retained service. So you're starting to then work on being that open, honest recruiter, having different price points for the service levels that you're delivering. And therefore the client sees you as an opportunity because you're being open on that front, but then you're actually being honest about what processes you should be doing. And that should all be backed up by your white paper, by your data, by the impact that you'll have on the business.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
I think that to get to that sort of stage of the relationship where you can have those conversations with your clients, it needs to be a foundation of trust, and also a foundation of good delivery. And I think one thing that we've not talked about in all of this is the reason why a lot of clients leave agencies is because their expectations haven't been met. There's been that old adage of over promise and under deliver. So you've got to ensure that your clients genuinely believe that you are there just to service them, no other clients. They are your number one priority. Don't be afraid to give them early warning if something's going wrong. Make sure that you've got that course correction. Then you can start to really build that sort of trusted partnership. But you've got to be able to deliver on what you say you're going to deliver. So that piece around expectation management is really, really key.
That's interesting, Kate, because I'm working with a client and we're doing this at the moment with a client where the client is having real difficulties selling to their end client, the agency, the differentiation in their recruitment. So we've put a process into place over the last 18 months, which is starting to really have an effect on them. So they're saying to the consultants, take every role as every other agency does it. Once they take the role, they sit there and evaluate the role. Then the MD rings the client back. and says either we're going to work the role, these are the reasons why we're going to work the role, or we're not going to work the role, and these are the reasons why. And if you want us to work the role, then it'll have to be either a retained level or whatever level it would be. And they're converting at that point about 1% into a retained business. However, 6 weeks later, when they go back and have that secondary call and the clients are going, exactly what you said's happened, I've got poor candidates, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. They're now converting 30 to 40% into retained business, because they're having a different outreach. And what he's understanding is that every recruiter is saying the same things. And what he's saying is that we're now trying to say it differently, but we're starting off at that point. Well, let's say the same as every other recruiter, but then let's be different and go back and be very, very consultative about why we can't or why we can fill the role. And they're having massive impact on in the marketplace with that type of strategy, which is very different. So if we look at this then, and we're going to talk about management, what role does management have to play in client retention? And how do you improve client engagement and satisfaction if you were running a recruitment agency?
So I'll kick off here. One of the things that for anyone that's talked to me for any length of time knows that I bring up regularly is culture. And again, you know, I'm probably turning the conversation inside out slightly, potentially, but I think, you know, as a leader of a recruitment agency, you've got to be the custodians of a really strong culture. You know, you've got to make sure that you role model every single thing that you want your staff, if you've got staff, to look like. You know, you've got to make it really clear, and it helps your clients see that you're going to remain visible and present, because the way you've approached working with them in the past, you know, if you've handed that off to a senior consultant or somebody that's, you know, a rookie account manager or whoever it might be, if you're role modeling and they can see that the person that's in front of them now is taking those behaviors on board and displaying them, then they can see that you're still present, you're still part of the business, you're still leading it, you're a big influence, you're developing, you're equipping, you're enabling, you're empowering. And I think being the custodian of that culture and remaining visible to your clients in that way, and also remaining visible in your industry, not necessarily with your clients day to day, but who are the industry experts that you're still close with, that you're talking to. You're recognized as not being just the recruitment expert, but you're expert in the sector or sectors that you work within. Then you remain trusted, and you know your clients can feel, see, sense that you're active and you're running a business, role modeling to the people that might actually be dealing with them on a day-to-day basis. So this is a massive, massive topic. It's a quick question, Howard, with a really long answer.
Yeah, I know.
And I'll stop there to let you know Kate and Heather and yourself have a go. But yeah, we could have a couple of hours on this topic alone.
I'll go for a really quick answer. They're everything. If your managers aren't focused on your client strategy and your managers aren't focusing their teams on your client strategy and your client outreach, you might as well not bother. I mean, they're absolutely everything when it comes to developing and building and improving your client strategy. There's my very quick answer to your massive topics.
And mine will be, if not as quick, even quicker, but it's that, you know, setting the tone from the top, you know, that piece around client centricity and visibility. So echo what you've both said, really, that, you know, the management, the leadership team have to be everywhere. And out in the marketplace as well. Yeah,
they must be going out to clients with consultants. They must be role models. They must be challenging consultants about what the reality of their relationships are.
Obviously, I'm constantly scribbling notes as people are talking, and the things that I wrote down there were quite simple. Ivory tower. You need to get out of your ivory tower and start to understand the differences in the buying culture and the buying nature of clients and how your culture there. And therefore, you've got to look at what your strategy is and what your execution is and what the gap between those two things are. And the first thing I'd look at, if I was managing managers, the first thing I'd look at is what's the fill rate? So for the jobs that you get on, what's the fill rate? Because if you haven't got a high fill rate, then it says you've got low satisfaction with your clients. If you've got low satisfaction with your clients, you don't know your clients. So to build retention with your clients, your management must be out there developing, delivering different information. And that goes into that sort of layered selling. The recruiter's talking to the recruitment line, okay? Who's the manager talking to? Who's the director talking to? So if you've got layered on layered selling, then all of a sudden you've got 3 or 4 people talking to that client, you're improving your capabilities. So one last question then, so very quickly, because we're just bang on time here, okay? So I want a quick answer on this, and it'd be an interest to see what we get from a quick answer. How can agencies maintain and strengthen their relationships with clients when key contacts and decision makers within those clients move on?
The quick answer is don't have just one point of contact.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
that's the quick answer. So lots of people in your business having contact with and relationships with lots of people in your client. The worst thing you can have is one hiring manager to one consultant.
Yeah. And we've talked about that quite a lot, haven't we, through this webinar. It's about having those different touch points. So maintain relationships beyond those individual contacts.
And having that web.
Yeah, exactly. And, from PAs and credit control through to the C-suite, plug in everywhere.
So I think
I heard a really nice term. I'll just quickly add this term. A recruitment agency owner said to me a couple of days ago that they've got this policy called land and expand.
Nice.
Where they build that matrix, whether it's HR, talent, finance, procurement, they've got that matrix of various people in their business talking to various people in their client's business. And it's how they expand that reach and those relationships. So I really liked that land and expand comment.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put it in a very simple way. When you look at the most recruitment agencies that are sub 10 heads, they will be reliant on probably 2 or 3 major clients. And what happens is when people are developing those client bases is that the owners of the business usually push that management or the development of that client down to somebody else, when actually the owner should have the key relationship with the key owners. And I think that's the bit we go back to ivory towers. You need to have that layered selling and lots of people in that client. And the most important person is the owner to the key decision maker within those clients, that is a simple ownership. And I think if you do that, then you're going to strengthen your relationships right across. Debbie, Kate, Heather, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much as well for attending. This is our last webinar of the first half of the year. We're going to break now for summer. So Heather's already on her summer holidays, but is actually joining us. So thank you very much for Heather.
Well done, Heather.
The rest of us are all going to go away over Easter. I'm going to over Easter. Over August. Don't know where that came from. Over August. Okay, I'm going to go from my usual Yorkshire blue to red and back to Yorkshire blue because I just don't go brown whatsoever. So you and everyone enjoy your holidays, and we'll see you all back in September. Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.